Over 30 years ago, Linn began an aggressive march into the future, expanding their line to include networked electronics and making a heavy investment in software engineering. This came on the heels of a long line of speakers and amplification products, which complemented their famous turntables, tone arms, and cartridges that date back to the 1970s. The Klimax system with 360 integrated exact speakers is Linn's flagship offering right now for two-channel music, and again aimed at exploring a better future. Let's see how it stacks up. The Linn Klimax system with 360 integrated exact speakers is a complete two-channel audio system, including speakers, 8 amplifiers, control center, D to A conversion, system hub, streamer, and room tuning. It's priced at $144,700, which we know may be out of reach for many of you. I think there's still an interesting story here, though, because of the relative rarity of high-end integrated systems and the technical insights these may offer. But you can be the judge of whether that's worth learning about if this is above your normal price shopping range. I will say that adding up all the components of an advanced stereo system into a single number makes price comparisons somewhat less intuitive, to put it mildly. So, as an example, if we said that a six-figure stereo might involve a $25,000 amplifier and a $15,000 preamp and a $20,000 DAC and a $10,000 streamer and $75,000 worth of speakers, well, we'd be at $145,000 or just north of the price of the Linn 360 integrated system. That doesn't make the Linn system affordable for some of you, but it does set some context for the pricing for those who can consider these things. The specific context that I also want to address and talk about in this regard is one of integrated systems versus separates. Traditionally, separates have been the path to high sonic quality. And yet, for a long time, designers have known that separate components designed with generic interfaces impose limitations or costs on the products these designers build. A classic example of this is the choice of crossover slopes for a speaker. Realistically, most designers won't do 24 or 36 or 48 dB per octave crossover slopes with passive components. This, or some other crossover curve, might be trivially easy with an electronic crossover. In turn, this might allow superior power handling and more flexible management of radiation patterns. Other design parameters that can be hard, that is, expensive, or impossible, to do passively include driver time domain correction, removal of power losses in the crossover, correction of room modes, tuning for room materials, adjustment for frequency balance preferences, automatic adjustment for listening levels, adjustments for the individual measured component values of each serial numbered product. So, the semi-technical point of interest is to catalog another example of how addressing these variables impacts sound quality. There's no doubt there are known technical issues here, but how is the state-of-the-art succeeding or not succeeding at addressing them? Addressing these issues raises another aspect of context that matters for understanding just about anything, and that certainly is the case with this system. Most of us consumers have some rules of thumb for simplifying what works in audio. The problem is these rules don't always work because the total system, from guitar to the brain, can easily defy our simplifications. An especially problematic example of this, in my humble opinion, is the use of DSP, which is often the means for dealing with some of the list of design issues I just rattled off. I don't say that DSP is always wonderful, anything but, so I can see why there are doubters. And yet, my experience is that DSP can be extremely powerful when well implemented. It has, it's true, taken several decades to get the underlying models to match the sophistication of the hardware, which has also grown dramatically during that period. But the same thing was true of solid-state amplification or D to A conversion, which could, after all, be viewed as a form of DSP. DSP is especially problematic because it opens up the world of computational audio, which is largely the realm of software engineering and psychoacoustics. These are domains outside the normal zone of electromechanical engineering, so we don't have as many examples to form our rules of thumb. Therefore, for this one, I encourage an open mind. That's relevant because high-end integrated systems like the Linn Klimax system, or the Focal Diva, which we've also covered, and others, endeavor to take advantage of the possibilities of electronic crossovers, direct-to-driver amplification, and DSP. In the case of the 360 integrated, Linn has used the electronics to correct for driver and digital distortions and also to address the real-world room environment that most speakers radiate into, a process they call space optimization. This is done less as a DIY tuning exercise for the consumer and more as a set of parameters, speaker position, room dimensions, room materials, that are used by Linn's cloud system to set a bevy of parameters to lower the system's inevitable time domain room issues as heard by your ears. This concept may be why the Linn system works well. It aims for a detailed, if complex, recipe for natural sound quality rather than tossing the consumer a set of ingredients and saying, good luck making dinner. The consumer can make some adjustments to the bass profile via a slider control that adjusts the software. The basic elements of the system are quite sophisticated as well. The 360 is a four-way system with a very small 19mm or 0.8-inch tweeter, which then crosses over to a 64mm or 2.5-inch dome carbon fiber midrange. These are driven by special adaptive bias amplifiers to minimize amplifier crossover distortion. An aluminum upper bass driver is used, followed by two larger high-excursion aluminum cone lower bass drivers. These bass drivers are driven directly by power DACs. Part of the effort in making a four-way system with impressively small upper-range drivers is to get off-axis response that mirrors the response on-axis. To execute this well, the crossover design and the compound curve cabinet design are necessarily complex. Okay, let's talk about sound quality. I had the opportunity to do extended and uninterrupted listening to the Linn 360 system at Audio Concepts, a dealer in Dallas with an excellent set of listening rooms. The room I used at Audio Concepts was very similar in dimensions to both my dedicated listening room and to many living rooms at 18 by 26 feet. I imagine that the attraction of a three-box system like the Linn Klimax, two box modules plus a small electronic hub for streaming, is the minimal disruption of the living environment. Assuming a living room as the target space, I think it's likely that room treatment will be minimal, as indeed it was at Audio Concepts. The speakers were also relatively close to the wall, about 3 feet out into the room, which again mirrors real domestic use. So I think what I heard might be a good indication of what a consumer might hear. Okay, enough preamble. What did I hear? Standout quality number one is the very spacious presentation. The images with the Klimax system are almost never locked on the speakers, and the image coherence was quite good. The image size is realistically large in width and depth and height on good recordings. The sense of the ambient environment is also genuinely excellent, with the hall or club sounding big but well proportioned vis-a-vis the sound stage that you would imagine. Those of you who like precision performer placement may find that the 360 isn't quite your cup of tea, but those familiar with live music will be amazed. The Christian McBride Big Band album, Without Further Ado, demonstrated these qualities nicely, with very good depth and a large sound space reminiscent of a small concert hall. I also tried Maria Milstein's Prokofiev Violin Concerto No. 2 and found the hall sound to be impressive. I happen to have heard this piece in concert about 36 hours earlier. The Prokofiev also provided a chance to check something that seems important for a usage scenario I imagined for these speakers. Sitting about 4 feet away from the sweet spot to the right, I was surprised by the quality of the soundstage and the preservation of performer positioning. I checked this on several other albums, like the Hadouk Trio's Air Hadouk, and got the same result. I do know that standing up still yields a good image, but the height is lowered more than it would happen in a concert venue. But in any event, the off-axis sound is really quite good. I also found that the Klimax system easily presented an image wider than the speaker locations. On Thomas Strunen's album Relations, the image extended about 3 feet outside the speaker locations on each side. All right, standout quality number 2 is the 360's lifelike handling of punch, drive, and scale. On many tracks, I noticed that the sense of rhythm was excellent with punchy percussion and bass lines. But even better, the overall sense of bounce and pace was a cut above. On Rhiannon Giddens' Too Little, Too Late, Too Bad, the whole band seems to be propelled forward in a wonderfully synced way. The Joe Policastro Trio's album Pops provides another example where the pace of the band just never drags. It's like the metronome was set to exciting and then wired directly to each performer's brain. This effect seemed to encompass the full frequency range, which is unusual. That said, I think the way the 360 system handles rock, blues, and jazz scale might be the big summary point here. On Crawling Kingsnake from the Black Keys album Delta Cream, the 360 system simply sounds epic. The spaciousness I described earlier, plus the rhythmic drive and the excellent instrumental separation add up to a huge win for fans of amplified music. Headroom doesn't seem compressed at reasonable but loud levels. I used about 85 dB on average, which is my max average level. It's easy to follow each player, and the size of the presentation is impressive and stable. Standout quality number 3 is a delivery of deep bass. The 360 seems to do bass in the 30 Hz or below range effortlessly. Those low notes are surprisingly impactful when it comes to spatial presentation. I had the feeling that the below 50 Hz range might be slightly elevated, which is what some research shows is desired by many people. It's certainly impressive and nicely judged rather than overbearing. If you've heard a large bass drum in a concert hall, you'll know that it's memorable. Ditto with the low bass here. Now, DSP can't correct for the lateral room null or the speaker boundary interference dip, so any room will impose some unevenness on the proceedings. And you hear this here as you do with other two-box systems. Next, let's talk about voicing. Since my bass balance comments raised the issue of voicing, we really should discuss it more broadly. In summary, I would say that the Klimax system is evenly balanced from the mid-bass up to the middle of the mid-range. With reference to the absolute sound, I would say there's a very shallow rise in response in the approximately 2 to 4K region. This rise may be broader than that. Importantly, it doesn't sound like a peak, but is rather a matter of emphasis if you pay close attention. And, since many recordings are a little too hot here, based on some measurements I've seen, it may simply be that the 360 system continues its even balance, rather than offering a small dip or roll-off in this area, as quite a number of speakers do. Regardless, the 360 emphasizes clarity and impact to a degree. This is well judged, so that with some recordings like the Prokofiev mentioned earlier, string tone is quite beautiful. As a voicing summary, I might say that the mid-range of the 360 is vivid rather than soft, and that the upper bass and lower mid-range are neutral rather than warm. A related factor is that I felt the Klimax emphasized and performed superbly in terms of instrumental clarity. At the same time, it didn't give the feeling of infinite low-level resolution that some systems, mostly above this price point, can give. The sense of subtle, fine-grained microdynamic resolution and low noise is not bad with the 360, but it isn't the win here. Some listeners who've been exploring the high end for years with a focus on audio quality will miss this. Many listeners, perhaps more focused on musical involvement, are likely to find the 360 system gets to the heart of what matters. All right, this has been lengthy. Let me summarize. The Linn Klimax 360 integrated exact system shows the sonic merits of a technological approach that few manufacturers can follow. This comes across as a big, bold, impactful, but essentially well-balanced sound. That combination is rare and is especially impressive because it can be delivered in real living rooms. I hope you've enjoyed this review of the Linn Klimax system. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you again soon.